Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, welcome to This is a Revolution, back for another week to discuss all things RevPro. I'm George, joined as always by my good friend, Mr. Dave the Mark. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Good evening, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing splendid, sir. Doing splendid. I'm in full tax year end mode at work, so it's a very busy time for me. So getting to sit down and discuss some wrestling, a lovely change of pace from what I've been doing today. How about you?
Nice. And a busy weekend of wrestling across the pro wrestling landscape, right?
God, wasn't it? Yeah. There's wrestling everywhere. It feels like Mania weekend, which we've still got to come in a few weeks.
Yeah. Like just seeing Manders lift the 16 karat gold, Ethan Allen get into the final of the Burning Heart tournament. Obviously, like AEW Revolution.
Great show of Eve as well.
Coventry.
Yeah, such an amazing weekend of wrestling, but also like European wrestling as well, and getting to take stock of all of the different places. You look at the shows there, right? So we had the Eve show on Friday, we had Revolution on Sunday, we've got the stuff out in Germany, we've got the other Burning Heart stuff going on, we've got RevPro going on. Every single one of those shows has wrestlers, not just from the UK, but who've all passed through RevPro. It's insane.
Yeah.
Amazing
like you think,
stuff.
like some of those standout matches and the matches that have been most talked about from the AEW Revolution card: Mariah May, Tony Storm, Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher. Like even when you then look at like Swerve Strickland and Ricochet, these are people that have all come through Rev Pro for varying amounts of time. But it's just cool to see, isn't it? Like I was looking at little highlight bits from the 16 karat gold, and you're like, it's just, there's so many people there that I've been introduced to because of Rev Pro.
Yeah.
You know, like from your Igel Blancs to your Thomas Shires, and like that's, and seeing Manders win it is just like, like really, like there's a really great photo of him doing the rounds where he looks like he's got tears in his eyes holding up the trophy.
Yeah.
And it just warmed my heart up.
Yeah. It is
in fact,
so
I'm
amazing.
A bit gutted that he wasn't in Coventry yesterday, because I finally got my little boy to a wrestling show.
Mate,
and it was so last minute as well. Me and the girls have had tickets, so I've got my season ticket for Coventry, so I'll be at all the Coventry shows all year. But it's almost, that and Stevenage are like our most local shows now.
Yeah.
We're like an hour south of Coventry and we're an hour north of Stevenage, sort of bang in the middle, like North Bedfordshire, almost Northamptonshire. And the little boy, Isaac, he was watching WWE stuff on YouTube yesterday. He was playing his WWE 2K game. Like, he's really getting into his wrestling. And I was sitting there. What was I watching? I was watching the New Japan Cup. And he came and he sat next to me. And immediately he was like, "Ooh, they've got a blue ring. This must be Japanese wrestling." I was like, "Yep." Like he's such a little sponge for information. And I was like, "Dude, are you sure you don't want to come to the wrestling with me and the girls today?" And he sort of was like very shy and, "Oh no." I was like, why not? What don't you think you'll like? And we kind of broke down all his fears about it. And it all came down to being shy and scared.
Oh.
He was scared that he would get hurt, which was so easy to overcome. I showed him some footage of live in Coventry shows from last year, so he could see what the venue looked like. I said, "We'll probably sit here. It'll be nice and safe. I'll be next to you. The girls will be next to you." I said, "There's the barrier separating you." And then he was worried that he didn't want to be like a center of attention. which is hilarious because once he was there, he was so loud. And it was just super lovely. And we got home. That little clip that I put up on socials of him enjoying it was simply my wife texted me a little bit of the way through, being like, "How's it going? Please let me know he's okay." So I literally just leant over and filmed him for 5 seconds and sent it to her. It was as soon as we got home, she was like, "Did you enjoy it?" And he was like, "Yeah." "Would you like to go again?" He was like, "Yep." "When can we go again?" So I'm pretty sure he'll be at the next Coventry show and the J Cup.
I love that.
And I love the fact that like tonight we were watching. We've been talking about wrestling this evening, and he's the amount of like specific things he remembers. So he came into me and was like, on WWE 2K, "What's a submission match?" And I said, "Oh, that's you can't win by pinfall. You can only win by making your opponent submit." And he just automatically turned around and went, "Oh, like Kanji made Lucia tap out." I was like, "Yes, just like that." And then he was like, "Connor Mills made Luke Jacobs tap out as well." I was like, "Yes, yes, he did." I said, "What other things do you remember?" He was like, "Stephen Wolf did a 619, Millie McKenzie did a spear," and he's just like, he's gone from having no interest in it whatsoever to it being his favourite thing in the world.
Oh, I love it.
And I know with him being the delightful little autistic boy that he is, he goes through these phases. So this might not be forever. I'm going to enjoy it as long as it lasts. And if in 6 months he's gone from wrestling to literally anything else, I'll know that we always had these little moments together.
Oh, I love that. I know what it's like. So my nephew, he showed an interest in wrestling when he was about 8 or 9, and my £50 budget I had for him for Christmas went out the window, and I bought him the ring. I bought him every single figure going. I bought him DVDs, and for about 4 or 5 months he was wrestling mad, and I loved it. And then his dad got him into football and tried to get him into Port Vale and all of this sort of shit, and I was just like, I've lost a potential family one. But mate, I imagine that was like wonderful because I was obviously watching on camera and I saw the ear defenders, but because he's so small, at first I thought it was one of the other daughters, and then I was like, as the camera panned around a different way, I saw him. Then I was like, oh, how amazing is that you've actually met? Because I know we've spoken on here before.
I reckon I left the house to get to Coventry at 1:30 yesterday. I reckon I bought him his ticket at midday.
God, crazy.
Like it was literally like that sort of last minute, and then it was right. How are we going to make wrestling Isaac proof?
Yeah,
we need to make sure we've got his drink because I can't get him a drink at the venue because he has to drink it from his specific bottle. It has to be our specific brand of Sainsbury's own brand orange and mango squash. Do you know what I mean? Like he's so specific. I had to sneak some sweets into the venue because he needs something to fiddle with. So I thought if I give him like a treat that he can eat as he goes, that's kind of serving 2 purposes. Yeah. It kind of gives him that little energy boost, and it gives him something to fiddle with. And I packed a couple of fiddle toys as well, the ear defenders, the iPad for the journey, like just all these things that I never normally think about with wrestling. But it was suddenly like, I can't just be in wrestling mode today. I've got to be in dad mode as well.
Yeah.
And then I'm excited to see. So Sophie was our official family photographer for the night.
I saw her with the phone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't take photos at the show. I took a couple of photos at the start, and she was taking photos at the same time. And then she realised that my camera was better than hers. She's got like one. I think she's got like Emily's old iPhone, and I've got a Pixel. So I was just like, she finds it difficult because she is so introverted that she would rather watch it through the lens than be watching it for herself, because she would find the concept of a wrestler looking at her uncomfortable.
I get that.
Or it's something for her to hide behind. She's painfully shy until she's not, and she comes completely out of her shell. But when she's in that mode, so yeah, she was our little photographer. Phoebe was like playing mum to Isaac, and it was quality. And like Phoebe went up and asked Cameron Kai for a photo, and
Of course
like
she
was
did.
brave enough to do it by herself. Stephen Wolf came and had his photo with Isaac, who was really unsure about it, but like Steve was amazing. Just getting down on his level, being really patient, waiting for him, not showing any signs of frustration that it probably took the amount of time it would take 3 or 4 people to have their photo with him, just for Isaac to kind of be convinced and then stand in the right place. But God bless these people, mate. They're such. I always say it. I've never had a negative interaction with any single wrestler that's come through RevPro. Like everyone's always been like just lovely, and when you take the kids, there's just this extra.
Yeah.
2 of my favourite moments were so Phoebe has this thing where she's like, Phoebe doesn't swear ever.
No, I remember you saying about the swear jar. Yeah.
Me off for swearing. She told Manders off for swearing when we
I
when we
remember.
met them at the J Cup, right? But her first ever RevPro show, I think it was, she saw Trent Seven and she got used to the Trent fucking Seven song, and she was like, am I allowed to swear at the wrestling? And I'm like, yep. If it's part of the wrestling, like that's the one time you're allowed to. So Lizzie Evo comes out and is like flipping off the crowd, and Phoebe's just sitting there like. It's just, I loved the fact that like Lizzie gave it completely back to her, and then Robbie X came out, and I could see Robbie looking at Phoebe, and I was like, something's happening. Phoebe's doing something to Robbie, and Robbie's reacting to her, but I couldn't see her. And when she turned around, I could see it, and she was just giving him the most disappointed, disapproving look I've ever seen, where it was just sort of like, shame on you, Robbie X. You were my favourite, and you're not anymore. And he was brilliant because he was just looking at her back as if to be like, you Mark. Like, it was brilliant. I loved it.
Honestly, one of my favourite times at a wrestling show was with Phoebe. And you, obviously. That sounded weird without. But when she was sat there, and just the way she'd like get involved, the sign, like sitting over a book, making the signs, going chatting to like really, I know it wasn't easy for her, going chatting to the wrestlers, like you said, going speak with Manders and stuff like that. And I'm like, God, I get worried sometimes about getting to speak to these people, most of who are younger than me as well, these wrestlers. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what if I make an idiot of myself? And she goes up and chats. Good on her.
Yeah, I love it because, like, I kind of look at it as it's really good exposure for her for simple things like paying for something in a shop and having the confidence to have an interaction with somebody. On Saturday night, she was performing on stage at the Bedford Corn Exchange, which is somewhere where RevPro have run shows before.
Yeah.
For the Bedfordshire Music, Speech and Drama Gala. And there's child prodigies there. Like there was this little 10-year-old girl playing the violin. And honestly, I've never felt like imposter syndrome like it, because I'm sitting there I think I was wearing a wrestling t-shirt, ripped jeans, and like a hoodie, and all these other people there are like suited and booted as this little girl performed this orchestral piece, and I'm just there like, I am not posh enough for this event in the slightest. And then like Phoebe comes up and her little school had won the Bedfordshire's Best Choir Award.
Oh, love it.
And there she is singing on stage. And I'm like, I never could have done that when I was 8 years old. Like to perform on a stage under a spotlight in front of people. But yeah. she's a little performer, mate. She is.
Like, I mean, I've done that when I was like 14, 15, but I couldn't imagine doing that. That was like when I was right in the sweet spot of like being old enough to be a little bit more self-assured of myself, but young enough to not have allowed the world to like
Yeah.
grind me down. But as an 8-year-old, no way. Like, good on her.
Mate,
Well done to you, Phoebe.
Yeah, well done, Phipps.
And mate, look, you talk about the imposter syndrome. Those people in there, they can get in there. They can go and enjoy the classical music. They can get suited and booted. But could they sit down and break down the psychology of a great Kanji match? No, they fucking couldn't.
Yeah, and I whilst watching on this fancy gala on Saturday night, I was thinking, from the fancy Bedfordshire gala to the HMV Empire for some quality graps. I was like, what a weekend for thieves.
Oh, she's got it
So
made,
mate,
hasn't she?
I posed you the question last week to open the show
Mm.
of how you would rank Live in London '93.
Mm-hmm.
How would you rank Live in Coventry?
Okay, so I think last week I said 7 out of 10, and we were discussing the like what makes good and what makes great. That's what we were discussing, weren't we? So this week, I felt there was a marked difference between the two, and some of it is I'm interested in getting into. But I think right in the here and now, if you asked me to pick where I put this, I'd say this was a 6 out of 10 show for me. This was a show that, for the most part, I would put everything in the good category,
Mm-hmm.
with one match that was standout great, and there was some in there which varied from the good to very good, but it was all in that good category. But I felt the main event was fantastic, and everything else was good. It was a show that I felt was noticeably lacking the big names at the top of the stories in there, or driving the big stories, and there was obviously bits and bobs going on here. But yeah, overall good.
Did anything disappoint?
Actually, there was
I
one
asked that
match.
question
Yeah,
for a reason. That's gonna link to where I start off with where I think it is. So that's not loaded.
yeah,
But
no,
was there anything that disappointed?
I would say no. There was one thing that actively disappointed me. What I would say is, as a wider piece, was I disappointed by this? Maybe not, but I felt like some of my expectations for matches weren't met compared to what I thought we would get and what they were. And that happens, right? And there's various factors that I think could play into that. I was actively disappointed by Ricky Knight Jr. and Cameron Kai. That match I thought was, I had that up as this is going to be a great match, and did not deliver in the slightest for me, which I'm quite shocked about because they're two guys I really love, two guys whose style I think are great, and I expect to have a great match together. And when I'm thinking back on the matches, there's literally only one thing I can remember about the match, other than the ending to it. There's the spot of Ricky diving over the chairs onto Cam. That's the only thing I can actually remember about the match. So yeah, and I want to say disappointing. Look, that's not to say like that's not to be too critical, but it's just one of those ones that, for whatever reason, it just didn't gel with me.
Right, and that is such a natural thing, like where you have high hopes for something, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't land where you were hoping it was going to land. It's not a criticism to the point of saying something was bad, or that you were disappointed because they weren't putting in the effort, or you were disappointed because we were promised something and instead we got given something else. I think that's completely fair, mate. The reason I asked it is because I rank this one as a 7 out of 10, the same as last week's, but I actually preferred yesterday's to last week's because I feel like, for two main reasons. One, I feel like my criticism of last week's show, for anyone that joined us, was the peaks were in the wrong places. The show peaked with the opener and with the main event of the first half, and nothing in the second half got to where those two got in the first half. So it kind of just felt a little bit uneven. This week, I feel like the two biggest peaks were the final two matches. And that's not to say that on every show you should have that New Japan style. New Japan's very much a case of the main event will be the best match, the semi-main will be the second best match, the third from top will be the third best match, and everything's designed to be like that. It's not to say that RevPro have to do that style, but I do feel like the main event should be equal to anything else that's on the card or better.
Yep. Agreed.
And that if you're going to have then another big moment, it needs to be like you can have it at the start and you can have it bookend the show. I think back to one of the 229s last year that I really enjoyed, where it had Zozaya and Leon Slater at the start, and it had JJ Gale and Luke Jacobs at the end, and lots of storyline stuff in between.
Yeah.
You can have the main event of the first half and the main event of the second half be the big moments. So you've got these little building blocks and then the big spectacular moments. Or you can, there's different ways of it. But I really enjoyed this because the main event was a fight, and CPF versus the Bryant brothers was a spectacle. And they were two very different matches. And for them to be the peaks meant that the second half had this really positive vibe towards the end. The other reason, I feel like, given the matches on the card, the amount of, let's say, storyline going into those matches and storyline coming out of them, the level of experience and the level of caliber of the talent involved in the matches, I would say that based on that, the 229 could have gone further than it did. Whereas I feel like the Coventry show got the most juice out of the fruit that they had in the fruit bowl. I feel like every match delivered to like a really high standard given that match, given how much was going into it and how much is going to come out of it. There was a lot of matches, weren't there, where it was, we've got JJ versus RKJ this week. So we had JJ versus Ridgeway.
Yeah.
And we had RKJ versus Cameron Kai, which ties up the Cameron Kai thing from last week.
Yeah.
There were lots of individual matches which are going to build towards the big event next week, but they weren't necessarily big matches in their own merits.
No.
There was no. This was the first show this year, I think. Last week's was the same. Last week and this week. So the first three shows of the year, I thought it was really, really obvious what the main event was going to be. No doubt about it. Zoe Lucas's return, Francisco's title match, and the Manders, Oku, Liam Slater were really, really obvious they were going to be the main events. Last week, I feel like the main event probably shouldn't have been the main event. This week, it was kind of like Jacobs versus Mills was the main event. It had to be the main event of this card, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be the main event of another card. Like we've seen that match before, not in the main event slot. But I'm really glad it was put in the main event because it was the best thing on this show.
Yeah, agreed.
I was very positive coming out of it. I'm curious to see what the live experience versus the on-demand experience was like.
Yeah, same.
It's Coventry is one of those places where I'm not sure how well the atmosphere translates to on-demand.
So I was going to ask you that, yeah.
I don't know if they've got necessarily the microphones and things. Like, obviously, they've only ever run that venue a few times.
Yeah.
Whereas the 229, they've been there for years, and Sheffield, they've now been there for years, and Southampton, they've been there for years. So I wonder if they're still playing with getting the right production because there weren't many people there yesterday. I would estimate there was somewhere between 100 and 125 people.
Okay.
But for such a small crowd, there was a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of crowd engagement, and lots of singing and chanting and cheering throughout the show. So I wonder how well that came across on demand.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know what's going to be, because the other thing I don't do when I go back, so I'll go back and watch, but not usually until a couple of months down the line, usually when I'm looking for an end of year list or something like that. And so to answer your first question, it sounded pretty much dead in there yesterday. Like the first thing that really grabbed me was what felt like a lack of atmosphere.
Oh, really?
But and now what I would say did come across at times is odd, almost like chants, like when a single person starts off a chant or tries to get something going. There was a few of that I could hear. I'll tell you what, one of the barometers or the things I measure, right, is if I'm watching something on demand and I know that friend of the podcast Sharon is there, and it doesn't pick up Sharon, then I know. So I also go, maybe that's not a true reflection of the atmosphere, because whenever I watch a show, I can sometimes hear Sharon before I can find her on screen. We love Sharon, right? That's not a criticism of Sharon before anyone gets defensive, but she is someone who's so animated and just gets so into it, and it's so involuntary. It comes out
in all the right ways as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Like she just gets into it, and so like you will hear it. Oh, didn't hear any of that from Sharon, and I know where she was sitting because first thing that appeared on my screen was the back of Sharon's head.
Yeah, I was going to say she was sat with the hard camera behind her.
Exactly.
With
Diamond. Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
And then
so
me and the kids were probably the loudest of our little section.
Yeah.
On the other side of the aisleway, there was this brilliant young girl who I sat next to at the Trios Grand Prix. She's got all the energy in the world and she knows her stuff, knows her wrestlers, loves singing the songs and chanting. So there was us on one side of the aisle, her and her dad on the other side of the aisle, which was lovely because it meant that when she started cheering, me and the kids joined in, and when mainly Isaac started cheering, her and I would chime in.
Love it.
Yeah, it was. I'd definitely say then, based on what you said, I've not watched it back. I will do at some point this week. I'd say the atmosphere in the venue was very good given the size of the crowd.
Yeah,
I think if you have that many people in, like if that was in Sheffield where they get a similar sort of size crowd, I think that would come across better on the production. And maybe it's just because the Sheffield network is this really tight little venue.
I was just going to say, because from what I understand, Coventry is a bigger venue that they only use some of the space for, right?
Yeah.
Which
I went there last year, or the year before last. I can't remember what it was. 23, to watch TNA.
Yeah.
And that had like several hundred in there.
Yeah.
So maybe some of that sound gets lost in the venue. They do quite a good job of just cutting certain sections of it off, and hopefully in time the crowd will grow. But what was also really nice to see, because we talked before, we used the phrase about it being like it's not a mature crowd for RevPro yet, in the sense that it's a developing market for them. They've only been to Coventry now. I think that was the fourth time.
About that, yeah.
I think it was the first one was Greedy Souls and Subculture was the main event. The second one was Dijak and Oku, and then the Trios Weekend was the third, I think, and then this is the fourth. So it's still very, very much in its early days, but you're seeing lots of the same faces, lots of the same people, and people that I haven't seen at other RevPro shows. So it does feel like there's a nice little market there.
Yeah, good.
It's just how much that market will grow over time. And I wasn't around RevPro in the early days of the two, when they moved from the cockpit to the 229, or when they first started doing the 1865 or the network. So I don't know what the early sized crowds look like.
Mm-hmm.
So for a point of comparison, but
yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's but I'm not surprised at your comment on the noise level, but not because I felt it was quiet in the show,
and that's
because
good.
I recall Coventry having quiet on demand in the past.
Yeah, and that's why I always find interesting, because, like you said, sometimes it's the way the venue gets mic'd up. I mean, let's be real, right? Like, when you've got a venue where bits are being cut off, sound can still get lost because it literally does not have a wall to reverberate against. Yeah. Like, so if you've got a cloth there, it's just not going to do the same thing. It's going to absorb, and that's fine, right? I'm not saying that. Look, the guys are going to the venues that make the most sense for them. They want to get a good crowd in there. They can't be expected to have everything like perfect acoustics like a big venue does, right? Like, we have to accept this is going to happen. And I find sometimes when I am watching things that if things aren't mic'd up well, then I can get out of it a bit more, and that could explain why some of these I felt were good matches rather than very good to great matches, because sometimes when it's not mic'd up properly and you're not there live to hear the actual impact of something, right? You see someone go, and it very quickly makes you go, is that just because it just didn't, like, it's not mic'd up enough, or is this just because it's not an impactful strike? And it takes, when look, we don't need the person at AW Revolution to spoil it for us that wrestling is predetermined. And if you haven't watched that clip yet, I'll explain to you afterwards. But yeah, like, we know all this, so that can, as a TV viewer, take me out of it a bit more. Plus, like we said, I found over the last year that now my taste is switching more from TV wrestling to live wrestling, like, in terms of what I enjoy more. So there's kind of all of those things, which I think culminate in different ways for me.
In the past we talked about James Ellis being a regular in Southampton.
Yeah.
And Liam Slater being a regular in Sheffield, and them kind of having these regional talent that they use, and then over time exposing them to more of the circuit.
Yeah.
Coventry is CPF.
See, I was going to say CPF and Bryan Brothers for sure. Yeah.
Over. Like, biggest reactions of anybody on the show by a real big distance.
Yeah.
And you're like, it makes perfect sense, right? Because last time we were all in Coventry, we saw 3 CPF bangers and we saw them win trophies.
Yeah.
So it's like, that felt like a really good investment on RevPro's behalf, because you think they could have had it go to Zozaya and Barcelona Blacklist. They could have gone that way, but would they be now kind of bearing the fruits of their labour? Because obviously you're not going to be able to have those guys on every Coventry show, but you could have CPF on every Coventry show, and like, they deserve to be booked on those shows, because they were the comfortably the most popular acts there. And my little boy fell in love with them immediately. But yeah, and that match for me, that match in the main event were the 2 matches which went from very good to great for me. And interesting, because I would say, on a personal point of view, my favourite types of wrestling don't necessarily... It means that it's harder, I think, to impress me, and that sounds... I don't like that phrase. That makes it... That sounds like a right ponce saying that. It's harder to get me... Like, if you put on a really good technical match, I'm going to eat it up. I'm going to absolutely eat it up. almost to the point where you're guaranteed for me to love any form of match which has got a bit of technical work in it. It's like a cheat code, you know. Like if I was, when you talk about like wrestlers knowing how to get stars out of Dave Meltzer, you want to get praise out of Dave the Mark. Do a bit of mat wrestling. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what I mean. And the cruiserweight style, the cocaine banger, the just bang 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 bang, like that needs to be really special to get me as excited as it will other people. Just, you know, different flavors of ice cream for different people.
Yeah.
So for CPF versus the Flying Bryant brothers, it's probably on the card one of the matches I was least excited for. No disrespect intended to any of the guys, but I saw it once before, not that long ago. There are other types of wrestling on the card which are gonna, you know, I'm gonna see Luke Jacobs and Connor Mills beat the shit out of each other. That makes me happy. I've got a Chris Ridgway match and a Kanji match, so I'm bloody delighted over here. And this match it was the best CPF trios match I've seen, on a level with the Barcelona Blacklist Zozaya. Like it was flip a coin as out of those two matches as to which one I preferred.
Okay.
I thought it was, I don't know if it was necessarily like a level above the first match they had with Flying Bryant brothers, or maybe just because I'm now a little bit more familiar with the Bryants than I was then. On the other hand, that could potentially make it harder, because the first time, you know, all I knew of the Bryant brothers were they're guys who come to RevPro shows and you know, train at the London School of Wrestling, so I know them from that side of it. I've never seen any of their matches. I don't have the highest expectations because I don't know them.
Yeah.
And then you watch them and you're like, wow, these guys are like really like different and good and exciting, and you've got my, you know, got me rubbing my hands watching it. Whereas this time I was expecting that. You know, there was no kind of beginner's luck. It was, the bar was higher, but I really felt they met it. And the match was put together brilliantly. Like towards the end with it was the first time, I'll say this as well, it was the first time we had a Lucha Rules match in RevPro where I felt like they really embraced the Lucha Rules. And the match benefited from it, because it meant it could just go that extra 5 miles an hour than they normally go at.
Yeah.
Because you can roll in and roll out. And it really, really, really got the crowd going. And I wonder if the main event would have got as much a crowd reaction had it gone on before CPF, because it's like CPF really got the crowd going, and then they just carried on into Luke Jacobs versus Connor Mills.
Yeah. I wonder that, because so look, I make it it's no secret that I find it sometimes hard to get invested in trios wrestling, right? I thought this was a good match, but trios by and large, again, not my thing. Not my thing when I'm watching on TV. When I'm there in person, I think it could be a very different experience, because you talked about the style of these guys, right? And actually, and this is why I think people like CPF, Flying Bryant Brothers, Leo Rush, they're all kind of brought in again more prominent spots in RevPro, because when you take kids or even as grown adults, you see some of the stuff these guys can do with your own eyes. It's like, what have I just witnessed? It takes on a completely different thing with it, right? I thought it was really smart having two very different types of matches back to back, because you look across the card and there's areas where you go, right, this is a technical match, but you've got a technician versus someone who's more of a high flyer but maybe incorporates that style. You can say that across the most of it, is that there's people with slightly differing techniques, but a lot of very similar kind of middle ground between them all. This was probably as different as you could get with these two matches.
Yeah.
Like you said, you've got this real big, high flying, and look, that sounds really reductive to the guys because they've got so much more in there rather than just high flyers. They're not just flippy shit. They've got a lot of great stuff in there, but very different to what we had come after it. I did laugh. I did wonder whether or not, and I can't remember who the referee was, but as soon as they said Lucha rules, I was like, hasn't Chris Hatch already been reffing the match? I always see that as the Chris Hatch rule of just not knowing who the legal person is in the ring at any time. And then you've got I thought it was very good. What I did find interesting, Dave, was the way commentary was talking about those trophies. So I don't know. Have you had a chance to get right? Yeah. So they talked about obviously wanting to be the best trio, right? So we've often thought about this. The way Andy Quildan made it sound is if they wanted to face another trio, they all had to cash in. That's how it came across. So he said they've got 3 wishes. They kept saying about the 3 wishes, and then said, are they going to go for individual gain, or are they going to club together to prove they're the best trio? Which I found really interesting because I thought at one point when they were speaking, I thought, are they just going to use each of their one to go up against like a massive? Like, I don't know who these massive trios would be because I can't say that trios wrestling is my an area that I have a lot of knowledge about. But are they going to get these 3 big trios in and have matches? Like, to me, the one I thought.
Does this suggest that we're going to get one big match?
That's how I've taken it, which means I don't think we'll get the match that I thought. The match that I thought, if they could use their trios, he said, or will they use it for individual gain? So that's why I was like, but I thought, well, then if someone uses it for individual gain, we can't have trios. So does that mean 2 of them are then going to go for tag team titles? So do we get Joe Lando?
Something we'd pitched before, wasn't it? That maybe one of them would go after the Cruiserweight belt whilst the other 2 go after the tag belts.
Yeah.
Or we could renew the Mills and Mayhew thing.
Yeah.
And have Mayhew go off in that direction whilst Danny and Lando go after the tag belts.
Yeah, so that's how it came across anyway, and I don't know if that's just how it's communicated. Certainly how
I took it. If it means they get one big trios match out of it, and even if that wasn't the original plan when they introduced these trophies, but they've kind of had some time to think, actually, we're going to do a little bit of a course direct. Hopefully people won't, have paid as too much attention to it or are going to forgive us for bending it ever so slightly, but we think it's more of a sustainable thing for the winners to get one big match out of it. I'm absolutely cool with that. I think
same.
For me, I said last week, I think the trophies are enough. I don't think they need to have this additional part of it. But if it means we get a really cool match and it means the winners get to have a really cool match, like, I'm absolutely fine with that. Especially when you think, like, as long as they deliver something that's actually where you can imagine these guys wanting it. Obviously, we know that Joe Lando has been quite vocal on socials about Amazing Red.
Well, I was just going to say that. So the Spanish announce team and the Amazing Red, I think they're all brothers. I think he's the older brother of those 2, and that's who CPF's entire gear is based on. Yeah. Like, that was straight away where my mind went. Those 3 against.
And CPF. If it wasn't if that's just not politically feasible, and it has to, or it's not feasible in the sense that it's just not obtainable, or not possible logistically for the next 6 months. As long as they then go with something of an equal kind of prestige, maybe Fantastica Mania, CPF versus Mystico and A and B.
Yeah.
And it'd be the draw of Mystico. And that's that would be like of an equivalence, or if they wanted to do something with New Japan and bring over one of the trios that works for the 6-man belts in New Japan. I'm not entirely sure. Again, I'm not a big watcher of CMLL. It's just not something which I have access to. New Japan I still watch avidly, but the 6-man belts in New Japan always feel like bottom of the priority list. But it's, there's an opportunity there for them to do something cool with CPF. And if nothing more, them always having their trophies, it just makes them look like bigger stars. And it's this constant reminder that they did something awesome. It reminds me of Owen Hart and his slammies back in the day. Like, I know that was like a heel making a thing out of his awards, but it just made him look like a bigger deal than where he was placed on the card, and it's working really well for CPF as well.
Agreed. And look, I think if they want to have that big match, high stakes, AW, put your hand in your pocket, send over Kenny and the Bucks.
Oh wow! Can you imagine?
Oh man, I could imagine.
Jesus Christ! Put your hand in your pocket. That's going to have to be a pretty deep pocket, that one.
Absolutely. So looking at the rest of the matches, Dave, I'll tell you which one my second favourite match of the night was. And you spoke earlier about the sum of what you were expecting. So I think you eloquently said it as the juice that you got from the fruits was as much as you could get from it. Well, I felt like there was one match that we got more juice from the fruit than even I was expected. And that was Kanji versus Lucia Lee. I thought this was fantastic. Now,
I think it's the best Lucia Lee match I've seen.
Yeah, agreed. And this was the second longest match of the night. Well, actually, no, sorry. The joint longest match of the night. This and the match that came after it, the CPF and Flying Bryant trios, were the longest matches at 17 minutes and 5 seconds each.
Really?
Yeah. And I thought this flew by for that.
Kanji didn't feel like it went that long at all, which I think is a like a compliment.
Absolutely.
In the sense that you can feel when a match drags, but sometimes a match which runs a little bit longer can just fly by. Mm-hmm. The biggest compliment I can pay is Lucia and Kanji looked on a very good level against each other.
Yeah.
Which, when I rank Kanji as like the standard for women's wrestling, like, her wins are Danny Luna, they're like top of the tree. And I think that Kanji, in the form that she's in, like we just sound like supermarks at this point because we're just raving about her every week. But her match with Sky Smithson followed that up by a match with Sapphire Reed, followed that up with this match with Lucia Lee. Like, she's getting the best matches out of everybody she's in the ring with, because the match with Sapphire last week was the best Sapphire Reed match I've seen. The match with Sky Smithson was the best Sky Smithson match I've seen. And now her match with Lucia is the best Lucia Lee match I've seen. Yeah. Like, there's a common denominator here, but you have to be able to work with that person. And you've got to be able to work with that person without any signs of hesitancy, going at the same speed that she goes at, going with the same level of impact and getting the emotion out of the fans and into the match. I really enjoyed this match. It had a slightly odd vibe in the venue because Lucia was the hometown girl.
Yeah.
Kanji's from Nottingham. With, which I'm not tremendously aware of like regional rivalries, but they were definitely going to cheer for the hometown girl rather than the girl from half an hour up the road.
Yeah.
But I liked it because you realise that Kanji's style, it works perfectly well as a heel as it does a face. Yeah. I just never want to see a Kanji heel turn because, like, I'm genuinely invested in what she does so much that it would break my heart and it would kill my kids. But I even like the fact that she played with it a little bit at the end when she lifted Lucia to her feet, and there was that moment of being like, I'm gonna knock her head off, and then she just smiled at the crowd and gave her a big hug. But yeah, I'm not surprised at all that you're picking this match as your next favourite. But also, when you said a match that delivered more than you thought it was going to be able to, I was sitting here thinking of, like, which one's he going to go for? Is it going to be this one, or is it going to be JJ Yao versus Chris Ridgway? Because I thought that match also delivered more than I had expected.
Interesting.
Obviously, I really like Chris Ridgway matches, but I also know that Chris Ridgway matches are normally very quiet affairs because of his technical style, and it's kind of like, it's not necessarily like a niche, but I think it's harder to get pops from the crowd wrestling that style than it is toe-paying and, you know, Canadian destroyering and stuff like this. But I thought JJ did a brilliant job of getting the crowd with him, and all those like facial expressions and the looks to the crowd, and he was kind of like drawing the crowd in without actually having to kind of beg for them to cheer him. And Ridgway did a really good job of being antagonistic. He did some bits in the match which I can't recall him doing that I really liked. Like the ring post, taking JJ and working his leg on the ring post and just pissing the crowd off by like giving him a little captain salute as he swings the leg round the post. And when he arched back on the figure of four, or the Indian deathlock, I can't remember which one it was that he did, and he's sort of like there going like, off I go, and snapping back. Like, he was winding the crowd up without actually really having to say anything.
Yeah.
And I really, really liked it. It didn't overstay its welcome in the slightest. I thought it was the perfect length. JJ won, but JJ also won convincingly. Like, he's hurt from Ridgway, so he's going into Epic Encounter with a wonky wheel. But he didn't do the JJ Gale of 2023, where him winning this match is a bit of a surprise, and he's got the shocked face, and he's won by some kind of roll up, or snatched the victory.
Yeah.
He earned the victory by surviving the onslaught and hitting his finisher. And I thought it made JJ look really strong, which built on last week's performance of him getting battered by Young Guns, but surviving them for as long as he did. And I feel like it was the perfect outcome for all of the ingredients at play this match. We got a good Chris Ridgway performance. We got a good JJ Gale performance. Ridgway looked like a mean bastard who can hurt people. JJ looked stronger for being able to survive it.
Yeah.
But you've also got the story going into next week of the fact that JJ's not as fresh as he would like to be going into facing the killer, Ricky Knight Jr. The Ricky and Cameron match didn't go how I thought it would.
Okay.
I thought it would be less competitive.
Okay,
and Ricky kind of won it by kind of stealing it at the end, right?
Yeah.
Like, Ricky survived Cameron Kai.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be more of a strong performance from Cameron. He's done well, competed as a cruiserweight, competing against one of the top heavyweights. But Ricky kind of wins after 10 minutes
Yeah.
And I quite liked the idea of Ricky going into the Epic Encounter pretty fresh. He's had a tune-up match with Cameron Kai, and he had a week off at the 229. Meanwhile, JJ's been battered by Chris Ridgway and Ethan Allen and Luke Jacobs. But obviously, that's not where they're wanting to take us with it. I was higher on the Cameron and Ricky match than you were, though. I did enjoy it. I'm hesitating. I'm trying to work out why I'm hesitating.
That was kind of where I went as well when I was thinking about it. Like, I thought, well, I must have liked it because I like the guys involved. But yeah, I had that just something I couldn't quite put my finger on.
Yeah. I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect between Cameron and the crowd. I felt it for a little while. I think he's finding it difficult to get the crowd working for him. And that will, that will come with experience and come with time, but it's probably one of the things that didn't help this match. How long was it?
This was 13 minutes and 5 seconds.
Now, this is one where it felt longer than it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a bit of a recurring theme with Ricky. I find sometimes his matches feel like they've gone longer than they have.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily mean that as a criticism, because
no.
I was not like I was sitting there thinking this is going long, or he should have put him away by now, or there's another false finish. Like, there was nothing like that. It just felt like Cameron put up a bigger fight and survived for longer, and then had his period where he was matching Ricky, and then in the end, it's Ricky that survives Cameron.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was. I don't recall seeing Cameron versus RKJ before.
No, I don't think so either.
I don't think they've had a singles match. If they have, I don't think I was there to see it, and I don't miss many. So I feel like it was a really good first match for them. And if we get RKJ versus Cameron Kai down the road, I'd happily watch them again, and I'd be interested to see how that evolves over time, as hopefully Cameron's character and his trajectory get to evolve. He's a little bit like 2025 hasn't really started for Cam yet, has it? Like, this was his first match.
It hasn't. Yeah.
And I'm keen to see what we're doing with him moving towards the summer months. Like, that feels like it's ages away, but you think, like, going in the run from Epic Encounter to High Stakes, what's he doing there? Is he part of High Stakes? Is he not? If he's not, the next thing is the J Cup after that. And you've got to think he's going to be part of the J Cup. So, there were lots of people touting him to win the J Cup this year. And right now, that doesn't feel like that's a likely outcome, simply because he's not been used very much yet.
No.
So, if we want him to be in that discussion, let's get the ball rolling with him. It's more of a let's see what's next for Cameron, rather than, it's not a disappointment, because I don't know, maybe he's not been available, maybe he's been nursing an injury, maybe it's just the fact that you can't fit everybody on the card, so it's we're going to keep Cameron quiet for the build to Epic Encounter, but then he's going to be integral to the build to the J Cup. I don't know what it is, but it feels like it's going to be intriguing to see where we go next with him. Yeah,
it was interesting as well, because like you said, Cam's 2025 hadn't really kicked off, and he was one of those guys that felt like a real presence on pretty much every card, especially in the tail end of last year, right? At least every regional show, Cameron Kai's name was there. But at one point also, we had it nailed on, I think, that he was going to be the next Cruiserweight champion. Like, or certainly one of the guys that we were like, this is going to be the next one. And kind of like we'd surmise that, hey, look, Lio Rush is going to have that match with Will Kaven. Will Kaven's going to overcome that. And then it's going to go on to Cam after that. Stephen Wolf coming in almost feels like not, I don't want to use the term take a spot because it's not, but like the focus obviously gone there because you're bringing someone in, you want to hoist your division up. And I think the goal there is, again, Kaven, I think, winning over these guys in that match. It's a really strong match. Then do we reinvigorate the camera and stuff back up there? Like, do we do that? But if that is the plan, at the minute, it doesn't feel like it's kind of being addressed enough on screen. And now I think obviously some matches for Cameron would help. I think just some quick a quick match here. It doesn't have to be against someone massive. You can have some quick, just allow him to get some reps, get some wins. Have Cameron versus one of the Flying Bryant brothers or something like that. I think would be a good undercard match. Allow him to get some wins, keep that going. But when he's not on screen, have commentary just drop some of these nuggets in there. It's one of the things we talked about last week about how things don't have to be playing out on screen all the time. As long as you just let us know every now and again, this hasn't been forgotten about.
Yeah.
Much like we said about the trophies and stuff like that. This is also where I've said it a lot before, but I think RevPro would really benefit from, during shows, having someone with a phone taking videos. Get Cameron Kai, get a minute from Cameron Kai talking, right? Chop it up, take the bits out that you want, utilize those on social media. I think social media is a tool that could really work for RevPro that is not being tapped into enough.
And I know that some, maybe that's taking Cameron out of his comfort zone. But the benefit of being able to do that is, you can have as many goes at it as you want. You can take as many takes at it as you want.
Yeah.
You can talk for 2 or 3 minutes and then just cut out the 30-second bit that sounds the best.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it however you want. It's and it's not necessarily employing someone to do it, is it? Because anybody can do that.
Yeah.
Like you can literally, and it doesn't have to be high production, because often the stuff that isn't high production comes across the most authentic. The Shah Samuels one at Sheffield Network was really good. The stuff that Liam Slater does before his matches, both of his matches have been really good.
Yeah.
And obviously these are very, very confident and comfortable talkers. But everyone's got to find their way with that sort of thing if they're going to take pro wrestling as far as they'd like to take it. And I think that especially if you're putting it on social media and you're not doing it in the ring in front of a live crowd, you can do it. And if you decide that it's not going to be used, you could not use it. But you could also put it out there, and it's generally people, I think, with the social stuff are much kinder than doing it in front of a live crowd where you just don't know how people are going to react. And someone can say something and it completely throw you off your ball. But yeah, I feel like those little things would be interesting. It did feel like we were going to come back round to Lio Rush and Cameron Kai because they'd been put so closely together.
Yeah.
I think back to Global Wars, and I think that was like Cameron Kai's career peak so far. Like big venue, opening the show, big responsibility, and he really bloody delivered as well.
He did.
I thought him and Kaven had a brilliant match.
So did I.
Really, really enjoyed it. And it's okay. It's okay that it's kind of cooled off a little bit since then, because as long as it heats back up for him.
Yeah.
It's not going to constantly be going up, is it? It's going to be ups and downs and cooling people down to heat them back up. So, yeah, I'm curious to see where we go next with it. And we'll talk about Epic Encounter in a little while, because I'll be keen to see where you think that match, as well as all the other matches, go. Probably my final word for live in Coventry was I really enjoyed Lizzie Evo versus Millie McKenzie. And again, I think that was the best Lizzie Evo match I've seen in RevPro so far, singles match. Really enjoyed both her performance, Millie's performance, their chemistry together. Mercedes plays was brilliant in her role. It just, all of it worked. And I hadn't seen Mercedes versus Millie at Epic Encounter. I didn't see that coming.
No, same.
I didn't know whether it was going to be a big 5-on-5 or if that's going to come later and this was just going to be a couple of Cutthroat Collective versus a couple of others. But I didn't see it being a straight singles match. And I'm actually more excited for it as a straight singles match, knowing that I think we're going to get a big multi-woman match along the way.
Yeah.
I'd rather one big multi-woman match that's can go anywhere close to what it did last year at the Copper Box.
Yeah.
I'd rather that and have some cool singles matches along the way.
Yeah.
I think Mercedes Blaze is a really underrated in-ring wrestler. I loved both her matches that she's had in RevPro with Chantel Jordan. And I think Chantel Jordan and Millie McKenzie have got some similarities in how they wrestle. But I would say that Millie's that little bit further along in her career and her confidence, that I feel like this could be probably I'm kind of going into it expecting it to be the best Mercedes Blaze match I've seen. And I'm going into it expecting it to be not like a show stealer, but one of those matches where you can forget it's on the card because you've got Hechicero and Zozaya's back, and you've got Manders and Oku for the title, and you've got Young Guns for the title, and sometimes you can be like, oh yeah, what's that other match we've got? Oh, Mercedes Blaze versus Millie McKenzie. And then they get in the ring and it really delivers, and people are talking about it afterwards, like, oh yeah, that match really took me by surprise. I feel like it's going to be one of them.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, right? Because you're always going to have your marquee matches that are going to be the ones that sell the event. But you still need the ones. I think it's just as important as having the ones where you've got the people. Cameron and Will Kaven, right, is the kind of match I'm thinking of when I say this. And this would also fit into that. The one from the undercard people who need that boost up within what you're doing. And look, I think I say that's kind of half and half because I do think, like you said, I don't think people have seen truthfully what Mercedes can bring. Right? I think she's starting to get highlighted because she's got such great big personality, which is such a compliment in the group she's in because they all have big personalities, right? Like, but to be
it's hard to stand out in the Cutthroat Collective, right?
But she does, because she's got this. I don't know. She's got this way of doing it that just feels, again, slightly dangerous, right? Like, not dangerous in the Sapphire Reed way of like she might just snap and just beat the shit out of you, or the Alex Windsor and Nina Samuels way. She's just, I don't know. There's just this low key kind of vibe with her that, again, she's
got a bark and a bite, right?
Yeah,
but I'd say, but they're both equally scary. I would be as frightened of Mercedes Blaze humiliating me in a verbal tirade than I would be from a slap from her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Yeah,
she can really humble somebody and embarrass somebody by talking them down, and that's great because she's got all the mind games, doesn't she?
She really, really does. And now, what's also I think people forget sometimes, who or might not even be so well versed, Millie McKenzie's been around for so long that you could be forgiven thinking she's older than she is. Or you could be forgiven for thinking she's a newbie. She's 24. She's literally, I think, 2 months younger than Luke Jacobs, right? Which is scary because I've known of Millie McKenzie probably twice as long as I've known of Luke Jacobs, right? So it just shows how young she was. Cage match alone, has 506 matches listed for Millie McKenzie. And
I said to her yesterday that it was her and Charlie Evans' promos and vignettes that they did for Progress in 2019, I think, which were one of my biggest gateways into British wrestling.
Interesting.
It was those. It was Eddie Kingston and Mad Kurt. It was Cara Noir and Ilya Dragunov, and it was Oku and Ospreay. And they are a little bit apart because the Progress stuff was all 2019, early 2020, and then obviously COVID. So COVID then shut it all down. And when we came out of COVID, it was Oku and Ospreay that made me aware that like wrestling was back. So it's like you think that she's been around forever, and then you forget that that's just because she started so young.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm just looking at all the matches now, like on Cage Match. I think I became aware of her probably around, I want to say somewhere between 2016, 2017 sort of time, I think. Which looking
that's crazy, right?
Yeah, and that was when I became.
You're literally talking about her being a teenager.
Right at the start of her career, actually, 2016. So it must have been more 2017 coming into 2018. But I'm looking at a match here, right, from Fight Club Pro, Jordan Devlin versus El Phantasmo, Mark Haskins, and Millie McKenzie. That's crazy stuff. And then I kind of was aware of the stuff she was doing out in Japan as well and stuff like that. So yeah, she's always someone that I've kind of always wanted to see come to RevPro and have that spot. She felt in that Sky Smithson kind of way of just how good she was, despite being so young. And it's why is she not getting booked? But she also has this kind of, she's not an out and out talker kind of wrestler, but she's just got this kind of quiet charisma about her.
Yeah, and she's got presence, hasn't she?
Yeah, she really does. Yeah,
in the ring, on the ramp, from the entire time, she owns the space that she's in all of the time.
Yeah.
I kind of think of her as a prize fighter.
Yeah.
She's not. I know she's the bad girl, but she's not. She's not a heel. But she's also not babyface either. She is just. She's a badass who kind of does what she wants to do, and I kind of feel like her motivation is the prize, and I really like that because I like the feeling with some wrestlers where on a dime they can switch, and I've really enjoyed everything with Millie and the Cutthroat Collective. And I don't foresee her ever joining the Cutthroat Collective. I don't think the Cutthroat Collective needs anybody else. I think they're perfect. Never change them.
No.
But I could see her turning on a Kanji just because it doesn't suit her interests to be Kanji's mate. It suits her interests to be the women's champion.
Yeah.
To be the women's champion, she has to beat all women. But I can see her having that. It's a little bit like she has a similar kind of presence to her as Ricky Knight Jr. had up until this heel turn.
Yeah.
Where you wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to cross Millie McKenzie.
No.
If I was one of the women in the women's division in RevPro, I wouldn't want to cross her. I wouldn't want to get on the bad side of her.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you'd want her in your corner. You'd want to be her mate. But it feels like a slightly delicate playground.
It really does. And I think part of that as well is because of how long she's been around. She almost has that grizzled veteran kind of quality to her, which, again, is insane. She's 24 years old, but she is world-travelled, experienced with a lot of different
years.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly.
Like,
And
how many women in British and European wrestling have wrestled as many times as she has? You know,
yeah,
ignore the years. Think about the minutes in the
actual,
ring.
yeah,
Think about the the bump count. How much has she done in her career? And the number of people she's worked with. I feel like she's someone that I would love to see featured as often as possible, because everything that she does feels really fresh as well. There's loads of matches that we haven't seen in RevPro involving her that I'd love to see.
yeah,
But it's the same with it was the same with Rio. And I
yeah,
understand that you can't have all of these people all of the time, because one, they're really in demand, and two, they're stars, and you can't book these people. You can't have everybody being the top star at the same time. Not everybody
yeah,
can be Michael Oku. Not everybody can be like Danny Luna. Not everyone can be like Alex Windsor, Kanji, Luke Jacobs. Like, these people have built themselves up to being the top level of their divisions. So for someone to come in, you've got to be careful not to kind of displace people. And again, not talking about like taking people's spots, but more like taking people's like ranking.
yeah. I'm with
You
you.
know, and it's really interesting though, and it's an epic encounter I'm excited for.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you just talking about Alex Windsor. That is a match I would love to see down the line. They've only wrestled
Yeah,
each other in singles matches 4 times.
really.
So, and that's since 2016. The first time was in 2016 when she was.
Who have they wrestled? Have they wrestled in Eve?
So yeah, they've wrestled twice in Eve. Once earlier this year, and 2023 they wrestled for Modern Nomad in
Yeah, yeah.
2022. So interestingly, Alex Windsor has only beaten Millie McKenzie once in singles wrestling.
Really? That's an
But
interesting little tidbit, isn't it?
going back to the first match, and it wasn't even Millie McKenzie at that point. It was maybe a relative of yours, Dave, Millie Marks. Right, Dave. We hinted at the beginning that an epic encounter rundown. So shall we give a quick rundown then of the match? So I'll fire out some matches. We'll do some quick thoughts, and we'll both give who we think is going to win. So let's start with that match that we just mentioned: Mercedes Blaze versus Millie McKenzie. I think Mercedes Blaze is going to win this. The reason for so is I think, first of all, every single member of the Cutthroat Collective, bar Mercedes Blaze, has wrestled this year. I don't recall Mercedes wrestling. They've all lost.
No, not yet.
Every single one of them has lost. So, and they've made a point of that on commentary, saying that every match they've been in, they've lost so far this year. Do we want to have every single one of them lose? No. Does it help highlight Mercedes? Like we said, there's that bit of wanting to highlight her higher, being the only member of the Cutthroat Collective that picks up a win. Do I think she does it by herself? No, I don't. And I think this is how we get to the 5-on-5 at high stakes. I think this leads into the Cutthroat Collective closing ranks and helping her destroy Millie, and that's how we get there.
Oh yeah, I'm really interested by everything you've just said, because when you first started speaking, my opinion was going to be that Millie would win, and that I liked the idea of none of the Cutthroat Collective winning, because the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and that they're best when they're working together. I liked the idea of them going away and licking their wounds and coming back kind of extra motivated and attacking everybody. But I'm also thinking about the fact that I am convinced that at high stakes we're going to get some kind of multi-woman match, because it feels like we've included too many people not to put them all together. And it feels like the Medusa complex is an inevitability.
We know that Charlie's in the country at that time as well.
Yes. Yep. The very first time Millie wrestled in this RevPro run, Andy was talking about Charlie Evans on commentary. So he's literally planted that seed from the very first match. And you saying that the best way to get there is to have Mercedes win sounds completely logical to me. So I think you've convinced me to agree with you, mate. I think Mercedes Blaze wins this match.
Wonderful. So then we move on to RKJ versus JJ Gale. What's your thoughts on that one?
I think Ricky wins. I think JJ had his big moment beating him in Sheffield.
Mm-hmm.
For where JJ is on his trajectory, that's a significant win. It's something, you know, he's got a win over RKJ now. He's still not been able to beat Luke Jacobs, but he's got a win over Ricky. I don't think he needs to win this one as well. Not in the same way that I feel like Ricky needs to win it. If Ricky was to lose this, I think we'd be asking questions as to what are we doing with him.
Yeah.
But I feel like a big Ricky Knight Jr. win here then leads us into Ricky and Oku. Unless, as we said before, we've got Leon and we've got Ricky and we've got Oku, and it feels like one of them's going to be the filler feud whilst we build up to the anniversary show, and the others, or it's going to be the other way around. So if it's going to be Ricky and Oku at the anniversary, then we have Oku and Leon now. If it's going to be Oku and Leon at the anniversary, we have Oku and Ricky now. I suppose it kind of depends on who you want to pass the championship on to, because I don't see Oku leaving the anniversary show with the belt.
No.
So I feel like Ricky wins this to keep us keep all of this interesting discussion alive, because it dies very quickly if he was to lose again.
Yeah, so I'm with you on pretty much all of that. I think, first of all, I think a stipulation gets added on the night. I thought we'd get it beforehand. I think a stipulation, like just basically not like a necessarily lights out, but that kind of, look, whatever happens, whether it's a no DQ, whether it's a no holds barred, however it looks, how they play, I think that gets announced on the night. The hangar is a big space, and I think giving these guys license to just go off and do stuff, I think could be really interesting. I am keen to agree with you about all of that, and the only thing, there's two things that could potentially change my mind. One, Leighton Buzzard. That little interaction, I said little interaction, there was a pretty big interaction in Coventry. Does that come back to bear fruit in the show? If not,
Leighton had a slightly fresh look, didn't he?
He did. It's almost like
and it feels like he's very much like getting ready to come back now.
Absolutely. Not the way that I was expecting him to come back, but I'm happy for some Leighton Buzzard, and what a good way to bring him back against someone like RKJ. If not that, I think you have to have something. I think something big has to happen, and when I say something, I mean someone, to basically cost Ricky the match. But then does that elevate JJ, his win? Does that make it feel like a cheap win? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I'm hypothesizing things that aren't going to happen. I think Ricky Knight Jr. is gonna. I think JJ is gonna go down, but he's gonna be elevated for it.
Yeah, I'm hoping for this. I personally don't want it to have a stipulation added to it, but I want it to be one of those matches where everything's a little bit looser. You know, like on the classic, like American TV, when it's a big event and the referee's given a little bit of freedom to relax the rules a little bit because nobody wants to see the big match end in a count out or a disqualification.
Yeah,
I quite like the idea that they go with that. We've got RevPro precedent that, you know, that a table, going for a table isn't a disqualification. So, you know, they can have it as an aggressive. I'm not saying that there needs to be tables in this match, but they can have a violent match without it needing to have a stipulation behind it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are in your boat because just from talking to people, they felt it was going to have a stipulation added to it. But I'd really just like to see JJ Gale in a proper, almost like completely change all of his moveset for this one match. And there not be the cool springboards and, the
Piss
cool
and vinegar
things that he
JJ.
does, and it just be like, no, I'm just going to beat the shit out of you, and you're going to beat the shit out of me. And it'd be like a proper kind of, almost like New Japan style hoss fight. What did we have this week? Well, what was I watching on the New Japan Cup yesterday? Drilla Maloney versus Tomohiro Ishii.
Okay.
Like, do you know what I mean? That sort of style match where it's just like, fuck it, let's just go. Like hammer and tongs, let's just go head to head. I like that idea. But yeah, I do see Ricky winning.
Yeah, excellent. Right, the Undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship triple threat match. Will Kaven, Robbie X, Stephen Wolf. I see Will Kaven pinning Stephen Wolf to retain the title. I think Stephen Wolf he's been really bigged up in his time with RevPro. This is a guy who has taken a loss in that as well, but feels super. Or has he taken? Yes, he has. He took the loss in Southampton. Yeah. Yes, I'm looking at my power rankings sheet in front of me. Yeah, that was it. So,
but he's pinned Kaven twice.
Stephen Wolf and Robbie X are, after Michael Oku, the two in-form wrestlers in RevPro.
Yeah.
Okay. Stephen Wolf has wrestled, aside from Manders, he is the man to wrestle the most in RevPro. 4 matches. They've been on every show up until this show. So now, actually, Stephen Wolf is the only person to have wrestled every show this year on the men's side.
I've really grown fond of him as well because I feel like with each match he gets more and more comfortable.
Yes.
I really enjoyed his match with Leon Cage in London last week, and this week's Coventry match. I feel like he was kind of like, I'd say he was probably the MVP of the match. It's got Robbie X in it. It's got Will Kaven. It's got Leon Cage to be the MVP of the match. It's pretty cool. Yeah. But obviously he got the pinfall and he got the shine from that. But I feel like I'm watching it and I'm thinking, wow, I'd love to see Leon Cage versus Stephen Wolf as tag team. And that was all coming from him. And it's like, I always feel like if you as a wrestler can make me want to see more of you, that's like your number one job, right? If you're new into a company, you come in and you make me like talk about you to the point where I want to see you again and again and again. If you're wrestling somebody, you make me want to see that match again. If there's a moment of, Leon Slater looking at Michael Oku and Michael Oku looking at Leon Slater in Southampton in December of last year, just in one look making me think, oh my God, I want that match. That's what this was. It was Wolf making me think like, oh, I like that tag team. Yeah. And Leon Cage won.
I was going to pick up
on that. I
really
liked how they played with that because Wolf was like literally being like, dude, you won. Like, your losing streak's over. You got your first win. But I like the fact that that's not going to be the win, is it? Because Leon Cage didn't win the match for his team. Stephen Wolf did.
Yeah. I like what they're doing there,
a nice little first step in the right direction.
Absolutely. And I think, I know we'll talk about this match, but I can't wait to see when he actually hits the stomp to the future. Because that is what they're building up to. It's not even a case of Leon Cage where they kind of go, right, he's going to hit his big move that everyone's came to see. Like, that is the match that that is the move that everyone wants to see live because just how incredible it is. And they're being smart with how they're playing off on it. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
I'm with you, though, mate. I think Kaven retains. And I think he pins Stephen Wolf simply because Wolf's pinned him twice.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's why I picked. But I don't think he'll be clean in the slightest. I think that Kaven's going to kick him in the dick. I think he's going to roll him up. I think it's going to be everybody wants Robbie X to win, or everybody wants Stephen Wolf to win. You have 50-50 fans, but the thing is, it's anyone but Kaven.
Yeah.
And Kaven's the one that leaves.
Yeah.
Flipping everybody off, booed out the building. And if he gets booed out the building, that's job well done, Will Kaven, right? Because that's his job.
Absolutely. And you know what? I don't know whether they're back in time, but maybe if a couple of little mugs are in the country, they could also maybe provide a little bit of assistance.
Yes. The mugs are back, aren't they?
They are indeed. They are indeed. And what a great job
they did in
Japan.
Mark True is fit and healthy, is he not?
From what I understand, yes.
There was a little bit of a scare, wasn't there, at the end of their Noah run?
Yeah, no, from what I understand, he is fit and healthy, and I'm pretty sure he's lined up for a Purpose show, and
I think he worked at the weekend, so that's what made me think it. So good, we're glad. We want everybody to be fit and healthy, especially when they're good people like Mark True.
Also, talk about Mark True and Purpose, which has just got me thinking of the Making Towns podcast that I know I got you to listen to.
Yes.
What a great podcast that is. Everyone
I really,
go check
like
that out.
it, mate. It's a really, really good listen. It's it feels very different to. So I really enjoy listening to the Grapple Theory podcasters, like my Brit Rest podcast, in terms of interviews with people. This is very different because it's someone that obviously the wrestlers are very familiar with from being involved with the Purpose shows, and it's very, very natural and informal. And I've really enjoyed the first 2 episodes. I haven't quite finished the Mark True episode. I've got a little bit left because I tend to take a week to listen to a podcast because I'll listen to like 15 minutes before I fall asleep each night. And then the next night I'll just rewind it back to wherever I fell asleep at. Some good podcasts out at the moment. I'm looking forward to the Grapple Theory with Sapphire and Anita Vaughan. That's on my to listen to list. And Chris Van Vliet with Will Ospreay.
That was very good. That was a very, very good one. Yeah. And also, this is Revolution.
The best podcast of all.
I like how we're both very in sync there, and we didn't even plan that. Right. Anyway, Dave, next match. Undisputed British Tag Team Championship. Connor Mills and Jay Joshua versus Young Guns. Talk to me about it.
Okay, so I'm conflicted because I want Jay Joshua and Connor Mills to win. I don't want their title reign to end. It's only just begun. I do want Young Guns to be the next tag champions. I really do. I just feel like we can delay it. I feel like there's some fun stuff to be done with the Young Guns in the meantime. I personally have this wonderful little story in my head of Ethan Allen having a little bit of a confidence crisis. His return to RevPro hasn't quite gone as successfully as he would want. We can even lean into the fact that he lost the final of the Burning Heart tournament, so we can talk about wrestling more generally, and him feel like he's letting the Young Guns down, and it leads to a clash between Ethan Allen and Luke Jacobs, but not in the team splitting up way, but more in the I need to prove that I'm on your level. Like, I need to face you in the ring. I need to prove to myself, not to you, but to myself, that I can actually go with you. And then we get Luke Jacobs versus Ethan Allen as this, and especially if they delayed it and they put that on, that could open high stakes, or that could be one of the featured matches of the J Cup, or it could be one of the featured matches of the Revolution Rumble. I feel like there's some really cool stuff to be done with Young Guns there. And I never want them to break the team up just to have a match between them. We don't need to. You can absolutely do it as Ethan trying to prove to himself, Luke never even doubting him. Think how good Kid Lycos versus Lycos 2 was last year. That was like a cool way of bringing us a one-on-one between the team. However, Connor Mills tapped Luke Jacobs outright.
He did.
I did not see that coming. No. I thought Jacobs was going to win that match.
Same.
we didn't talk about it very much earlier, but it was a very enjoyable main event. I don't think it was. I don't think it was as shocking as last year's clash that they had when it ended in the referee stoppage.
No.
But that's not to say that it wasn't brilliant, because it really was. It was definitely the best thing on the card. Did you see Conor Mills' head bleeding after he headbutted Luke Jacobs? It was not nice.
I don't think I did. No.
Yeah,
Or
so
certainly didn't catch
because
it.
it didn't even look like there was a cut. It literally looked like there was just blood. Like, like when you're chopped and you damage the skin to the point where it just breaks and starts bleeding, but there's no like real cut.
Mm-hmm.
It was like that. He just had blood coming through his forehead, and it was disgusting. It was a proper violent 15-minute like slobber knocker, for an old phrase. But the fact that Mills won has really put into jeopardy for me whether or not the Young Guns are going to then win. It's probably the match that I am most excited for on this card at Epic Encounter, which is really incredible because I've wanted to watch Deonna Purrazzo for years. Loved her as the Knockouts champion in Impact. Her run with the belt, everything she did with Mickie James. They like headlined, I think it was Slammiversary, and I was so invested in that. I'm paying £20 a month to watch Impact pay-per-views, which I haven't done really since, but I did at that time. Really, really invested in her. And then on the other end, we've got Manders versus Oku, which the very first time we saw Manders, my takeaway was, God, I want to see him work Oku. I feel like that's the best Manders match we're going to see is him and Oku. And now I'm even more excited for it because I'm like, well, I think I've seen the best Manders match I can watch between him and Slater. So can he do it again with Oku? So there's matches there that I'm really excited for, but for different reasons. But the Young Guns versus Joshua and Mills is going to have me on the edge of my seat because every near fall I'm going to completely buy because I don't know who is winning this match. I really don't.
Yeah, I think so. I understand a lot of what you're saying there, and I think the booking into this has been tremendous. Like, there's things that you can call on other wrestling shows where you go, well, if this happens, this is going to happen. This is like, for those who I'm not going to spoil anything, but on the AEW show, I was like, depending on who wins this match, I think will tell you who's going to win this match.
Yeah.
And it 100% played into it. Right? 100% played into
Ricochet
it. Like,
and Swerve affecting Adam Copeland and Moxley.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, that's exactly how that's going to go. So this one seems to be subverting all of those normal things, like you said. This feels like a match where no team can lose. And I think sometimes that feels in a bad way, and it's because the teams are not built up in a good way, and you go, none of them can afford to lose. Whereas none of them can lose because they're just on such a roll at the moment. That's the kind you want in there. I think I've been thinking it for weeks now because you mentioned it a couple of weeks ago about Luke and Ethan. We picked up on things at the first 229 of what looked like dissension. There hasn't been any of that since, but we've had the Doomsday device that ended up Young Guns taking each other out. We've had Luke tapping to Conor Mills. We could have something where Ethan becomes the aggressor more. Not necessarily a crisis of confidence, but I'm going to say Mills and Joshua retain because I think that's the right thing for now. I'm going to even say that Luke takes the loss. And that then impacts the story between him and Ethan.
Ethan tapped Mills out at the anniversary show, didn't he?
He did.
And Jacobs tapped out to Mills.
Yeah.
Just an interesting little comparison. Yeah. I think for me, there is more interesting stuff to be done with the Young Guns as the losing team than there is with Mills and Joshua as the losing team.
Same.
And therefore that tells me that the right thing to do is to keep the belts on Mills and Joshua.
Yeah, I would agree with you, my friend. I would definitely agree with you. Now, we just obviously talk about good old technical wrestling there. Deonna Purrazzo versus Kanji, or as I like to call it, the reason why my ticket was bought. Look,
yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
I remember texting you when Andy put the graphic up. Literally, just you think you're going to want to get that Epic Encounter ticket, because we'd talked about the fact that at the time you weren't going to make the show, but we'd also had conversations, as we often do, about wrestlers who are game changers. Like, who would you go out of your way to pay to go and see? Who's going to draw you in to a show that you weren't otherwise going to go to? And you'd said for a long time, you'd said Deonna Purrazzo.
I did.
I knew you were buying your ticket the second that match graphic went up.
Yeah, look, I had a gig ticket booked for Sunday night in Southampton. I paid 30 quid for this gig ticket. And as soon as this was announced, it was a no-brainer. Like, I think Hechicero versus Zozaya, which we'll touch on, also was one of those matches where it's like, this is cool. Now, so this alongside that, but this one in itself was enough to get me to go, right, I'm going. The winner of this match is going to be me, because I'm going to see two of the absolute best at what they do, the style of wrestling they do, and the style of wrestling that when it is done the best way, not just dryly, like actually with a bit of personality and where you can gravitate towards people, they've both got that in them. This is going to be...
And in different ways as well, right?
Absolutely.
Kanji's the technician that draws you into supporting her, and Deonna's the technician who uses it to be cocky and arrogant.
Exactly. Sorry, Phoebe. This is going to be fucking fantastic. Yeah, but who's going to win this?
She was literally asking me tonight if she could come.
There is only going to be one winner here, and it's Kanji. Right, it's not going to be anyone but Kanji. And that is mad that I am saying with such like full-blooded confidence that Deonna Purrazzo, you know, the woman that is former Knockouts champion, who has been in NXT, who is a featured wrestler on AEW, who has had a story up against Toni Storm, who is probably the biggest phenomenon in women's wrestling at the moment, right? To say as emphatically Kanji's going to get the win shows the trajectory she's on. Now, could you have Kanji lose here and this be the bump in the road, the adversity, as the WWE fans would like to say it, with obviously she has to face the adversity at some point. She does.
I mean, that's a good point.
So, could this be the moment where,
if you wanted to drag it out, if it was one where it was, we talked before, right, about Mercedes successfully defending and then losing, and we'd talked about I'd pitched her versus Kanji versus Alex at high stakes, and then her versus either Alex or Kanji on the first night of the anniversary, and the other on the second night, and her lose on the third defense.
Yeah.
So she's in the UK for 2 weekends, and we get 3 matches out of it, and it feels like a really good use of everybody's kind of time and her time ultimately. But what if Kanji loses now as that adversity, that bump in the road, which means we get maybe Alex versus Mercedes at high stakes, and then Kanji has to build her way back up for the anniversary show. I will be heartbroken if it happens, but that's how good Kanji is at making me genuinely invested in everything that she does. I wouldn't hate it in the sense that if that's the story they tell, the catharsis at the anniversary show will be worth the pain now.
Yeah.
It might also mean that you get Deonna Purrazzo versus Mercedes Monet for the RevPro belt at some stage. I don't know if that would be in the UK in RevPro, or if it would be maybe on, I don't know, would they put that on Ring of Honor? Would they put that on AEW? Might it happen in New Japan?
I reckon the 1865.
Yeah, I mean, St. Neots Priory Centre's not available, so 1865 it is.
Yeah. Imagine that at St. Neots.
I don't know. I'm talking about it because I like the idea of there being jeopardy as the result. And I'm so invested in Kanji winning it that I'm trying to protect myself from the distress of seeing her lose. Because like genuinely, she is the one wrestler in all of RevPro where she's like Sunshine Machine for me, where I forget all about the predetermined long-term storytelling, and I just want to see my favourites win.
Yeah,
it's like when Michael Oku has, sad face Michael Oku at the end of a match where he looks lost, and I just want to go and give him a hug. Like it's that level of bringing down the disbelief and so completely suspending it, and these guys just absolutely can.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, it's going to be. I look. There's a few matches here. I think it'll be contenders for match of the year, and I think this one is well up with that. Speaking of which ones of matches we think could be contenders of the year, right? Because we've got 2 matches left. Some quick thoughts on the next one. Hechicero versus Zozaya. There's not a lot to discuss in the way of story build because it's just a banger match. Here it is. We know this is going to be great, right? We just know, right? We've seen all of what Zozaya is doing in RevPro and in Japan at the moment. We're seeing what Hechicero can do when he gets in there against someone who is fantastic. Who do you think is going to win? I mean, Zozaya feels like the natural one to me here.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about this earlier. I don't know where Hechicero is in terms of CMLL stories and where he is. Like, is he in contention for any forms of championship where they wouldn't want him to lose? Does what happens in RevPro affect that?
Yeah.
What's the crossover audience between the CMLL Mexican fans and our wonderful British independent wrestling company?
Yeah.
I think Zozaya wins. I don't think any wrestler losing to Zozaya is something that anyone's above. I think he's got that much stock at present. I'm hoping. I don't know Zozaya's schedule. This is where I'd love to have Peps here and have him tell us, because I'm hoping this is the first of many Zozaya appearances in RevPro this year. I feel like we've missed him.
Yeah, we have.
He's that good that you notice when he's not around. It's like when Leon goes away for a little while. If he's got a run of TNA commitments, you miss him whilst he's gone. I think the Epic Encounter card at the moment is missing a Leon Slater match. But at the same time, I feel like it's a really nice, neat 7-match card. Yeah. And we don't want to just add something for the sake of it. But Leon Slater makes every show better.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing where if there's going to be an 8th match, I hope it's a cool Leon match. So I think Zozaya to win. I think it's going to be a really cool match because obviously Hechicero is incredible at what he does. Zozaya is really, he is such a good amateur wrestler and such a good technician and mat wrestler and hold for hold, counter for counter. I think it's going to be really cool. I think it will be the sort of match that is going to be the match of the night for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It might not necessarily be for everybody because that's Hechicero, that's technical wrestling. But But for those that like this kind of stuff, this is going to be one we're talking about for a long time.
Yeah, agreed. This was the one that when we were discussing what the matches could be, that was like, what is the match that's going to get announced for this show? Like, we knew something was coming. I don't think any of us had this on our bingo card as this is going to be the match.
No.
But yeah, I think
the minute you see the graphic, you're like, oh yes,
yeah,
please.
I agreed with that. So that Dave, that brings on to what I think is going to be the main event, and I think deserves to be the main event. Yeah, Michael Oku versus one called Manders. I think the story to get us here has been brilliant. I think it's I don't know how many short term, when I say short term, it's been a few months, but a short term run as someone coming in, establishing themselves this well with the audience as Manders has, and capping it off with a position that makes him be a lot more of a layered character at the end. So
I genuinely believe that Manders will finish Epic Encounter getting cheered out the building.
So do I. Absolutely.
Even though he's had to show his teeth to get here, I think he's fully capable of just turning it back.
Yeah.
I mean, Zach Gibson did it, right? Zach Gibson had the crowd cheering him at Uprising, and I don't think Zach was. He was an out-and-out vile heel who managed to turn it back, whereas Manders has been a beloved babyface, shown his nasty streak. It's much easier for him to turn it back than it was for Gibson.
Agreed with you on that. Yeah.
And I think everybody wants to cheer Manders. Nobody wants to boo him. No. But I think he's such a good character, such a good wrestler, knows himself inside out, that he'll be able to play with the crowd's reactions and he'll get whatever reaction he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And Oku is the quintessential babyface, isn't he?
Yeah,
and we know that there's another side to him, and we know it's always there. But when he needs to be the underdog, no one can do it as well as he can.
No, it's going to be a superb match. I don't think there's any doubt for me that Oku retains.
No,
but I don't think that's going to matter. I think this feels like it's the perfect. We talked about this last time. There's no shows after this for 2 weeks. It feels like the first part of the season is done. Act 1 is done.
Yeah.
Right. Act 1 is now. Act 2 is the middle part of the year. Act 3 is leading up to anniversary show. Okay, that's how it structured in my side. We've got the first part done, and I think this is all about giving Manders that really capping off what has been a tremendous run. We're gonna miss this man dearly because we're so used to having him here and the quality of match that he's putting out. Look, I'll be honest, right? I watched a few One Called Manders matches before he came here. I'm going to be up front, right? When he was announced for Progress, and I saw he was announced for Progress, and I was like, someone said to me about going, I was like, oh, I'm not sure he wrestles for GCW, probably not my sort of thing. I said, I'll be up front. I said, there's probably a reason why like Progress is grabbing him rather than RevPro. Maybe there's just it fits more with their style. And then he got announced for RevPro, and I was like, wasn't expecting that. And by spending that time watching and seeing what he was about, managed to completely subvert my expectations of what I thought he would be. And even after that great match with Luke last year, the way he has managed to up his own game in so many ways against so many different types of opponents, against people in seemingly every country in Europe. That man has come over here, he's worked his ass off, and he's just garnered so much respect. Like,
he's shown that there's a lot to his game, isn't there?
Yes.
Like he's a very good hoss fighter, but that's just one side of it.
Yeah.
He's very, very good at all sides of it. Some of the things that I find most impressive about him are the things that you would least expect from him. Like his selling is fantastic. His reactions, his facial expressions, his body language, the way he draws the best out of the opponent that he's facing. He's just a whole nother level to what I was expecting based on. Now I'm in my 4th year of going to RevPro shows pretty regularly. Of what I was expecting from somebody coming over for a little run in RevPro.
Yeah.
The bar isn't normally as high as what he has risen it to.
Yeah, he's been tremendous, and the way he connects with people. There's few people that does it, and the only other person I think who does it as well is Michael Oku. I think this match actually is going to split the crowd, and I think it's going to create such an atmosphere.
To see how it all goes, because I think it's going to be it's going to feel like a main event.
Yeah,
they're going to make it feel like the biggest, most important thing on that card. And that's saying something, because I think this card is absolutely banging.
Yeah,
and
same.
No fat whatsoever. Like, there is nothing on here where I look at it and be like, oh yeah, I can imagine the crowd will dip at that point. Well, there's nothing on there where I'm sort of like, I'll put that on first, and we'll kind of like, that'll warm everybody up. But everything I'm fully invested in. Yeah, really excited for my first trip to the Wolverhampton Hangar. The Hangar feels like quite a famous place to me in British wrestling, just from, OTT running it being where Mox's Cometh the Light and Trent Seven storyline was all from. Like, bang up for it.
It's going to be so much fun. I cannot wait to be there this weekend. No one has ever said that about Wolverhampton before, but hey, cannot wait to be there. I'll be looking forward to it. Dave, any final words for the people before we finish off the night?
I don't think so, mate. Just, just enjoy everything that is to come. There's a lot of wrestling to be had in RevPro over the next few months.
And I can sum up even more succinctly than that. Ladies and gentlemen, mark out. Catch you all next time.